Jim Allister, TUV Leader, thank you very much for speaking to Belfast Live. I wanted to first of all ask you about the Windsor Framework. Surely unionism must now accept that the Windsor Framework and the Northern Ireland Protocol is here to stay?
To accept that we never again will be a full part of the United Kingdom, that we will never again belong to a country that makes its own laws, that we will be colonised under foreign laws, foreign jurisdiction, foreign court, subject to a foreign customs code that tells us that GB, the other part of my nation, is a foreign country. I don't think it's time to come to terms with that at all, because to come to terms with that is to come to terms with exiting the United Kingdom.
Now, if the Prime Minister, the UK government and the UK's sovereign parliament all back the Windsor Framework, then what is the alternative for unionism apart from returning to Stormont power sharing?
Well, to return to Stormont power sharing is to become protocol slaves, to implement the protocol, because the High Court ruling in Rooney against Poots just before Christmas made it abundantly clear, and correctly so, that if there was an executive, its ministers by law would be obligated to implement the protocol at its Irish sea border. Now that is not something that any unionist with any credibility can do. So returning to Stormont to be a protocol slave is not an option as far as I'm concerned.
What do you think is going on within the DUP right now in relation to the Windsor Framework?
I think there are differing tensions and views. I think that there are some to whom position is more important than principle, and who would strive to seek to reconcile the unreconcilable of being protocol implementers by returning to Stormont. I think there are others who recognise the very definite impact of that in terms of accepting that you're being detached by your own hand through that implementation of the protocol from the United Kingdom, that you're willingly subjecting yourself to foreign jurisdiction and colonial rule, and that you're really taking part in a Vichy administration. I think there are some who see that, and those who don't should see it.
Do you think it's the case that the DUP is simply stalling on making a decision ahead of the local government elections before then returning to Stormont power sharing?
I can tell you this, no one is wondering where TUV will stand the morning after the council elections. If people are wondering where the DUP will stand the morning after the council elections, then that is a serious issue that every voter should consider if they are concerned about the protocol issue before they endorse such an ambivalent approach.
Now, one of your candidates in the Assembly election last year, Jordan Doran, he stood for TUV in West Belfast. He's since joined DUP to be co-opted as a councillor, and whenever he joined TUV, he said he wanted to see what he described as stronger and more cohesive unionism, and he said the DUP is the only party which can achieve this. So what's your response to that?
My response is what Jordan said during the last election, when he belittled the very suggestion that one should vote DUP by pointing out that DUP had time without number gone back and where they were. I think Jordan, for whatever reason, is a practitioner of position before principle.
Now, looking at your own candidates for the upcoming local government election, Anne Smith is a TUV candidate in the Titanic area of East Belfast. Now, she's also the mother of the BBC Northern Ireland interim director, Adam Smith. The BBC has insisted that this does not in any way compromise the impartiality of the BBC. So what I wanted to ask is, do you think that this compromises BBC impartiality?
Absolutely not. This office has had more rows with the BBC and its director than probably most. So, I don't think there's any issue there.
Now, the DUP has selected Tyler Hoey to stand for the party in the Bandside area of Ballymena for Mid and East Antrim Borough Council in the upcoming council elections. Now, as you may know, Mr. Hoey has been criticised for past social media posts. He liked a tweet glorifying the gunmen involved in the UDA's murder of 8 people at Greysteel in 1993. He also made references to the UDA in various different posts, and he appeared to joke about the death of 39 migrants in a lorry in 2019. Now, for DUP leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson's part, he has described the messages as indefensible, and he said that he believes that Mr. Hoey deserves a second chance, or is entitled to a second chance. So, do you think the DUP is right to allow Mr. Hoey to be a candidate for them in the upcoming election?
I'm tempted to say that it greatly assists the TUV candidatures in Bandside, so maybe I should agree with them doing that, but I do think, in all seriousness, they are quite appalling tweets. They're not just one-off slips where someone, without reflecting, says something. There's a series here from this young man of quite unacceptable embracing of concepts and causes which, to my mind, would make him unsuitable for seeking public office. But that's a matter, not for me, but for the DUP. He's their candidate.
In Ards and North Down Borough Council, Stephen Cooper, who came close to being elected for TUV in last year's Assembly election in the Strangford area, he recently quit your party ahead of the conclusion of an internal probe into an allegation of harassment by a female member. TUV has said at the time that Mr. Cooper has apologised for any actions which may have caused hurt or distress. And Mr. Cooper, for his part, has said that he's disappointed that the party didn't back him, and he hoped that his resignation would negate the need for a full party investigation. So what I want to check is, did TUV complete its investigation? And if so, what were the findings?
Well, Mr. Cooper, by his resignation, aborted the investigation because there no longer was a party member to investigate. He'd gone. Now, his resignation was unsolicited. He issued an official response to the complaint as part of the process, and then followed it up with a resignation, apparently on the basis that he thought he was above or shouldn't have been investigated. But his resignation was of his own volition. He didn't allow the process to complete. I can't say what the outcome of the process would have been, but he obviously aborted the process by his actions.
And just around Mr. Cooper, you know, he was your best hope of getting a second MLA seat in the Assembly elections last year. So, given everything that's happened, you must be disappointed that you lost your best.
I am disappointed, of course. Stephen came very close in Strangford, and indeed, the 200 votes that he missed out by, there were more than 200 inter-unionist transfers that didn't go unionist, which cost us that seat. But and that, to an extent, was the story of last May. That, you know, 65,000 votes in one seat, because we didn't. There wasn't a matching of the transfers that we gave to other unionist TV candidates elected on their votes. 10 other unionists to the Assembly. It wasn't reciprocated from others. But yes, yeah, of course, to lose someone who came so close is disappointing. But, you know, we're all, the party's bigger than any individual, so onwards and upwards.
You were critical of the Alliance Party for unseating a unionist MLA in your constituency of North Antrim in last year's Assembly election in May 2022. That Alliance MLA, Patricia Lynn, has now announced that she is resigning from her role to take up a new post at Queen's University Belfast, and she's also launched a website as a keynote speaker. So what do you make of all this and her decision to resign?
I wasn't aware of the keynote speaker. It certainly wasn't from Assembly experience that you can advertise herself as a keynote speaker, but well, you know, she must speak for herself, but it does show a lack of stickability and commitment when you go to an electorate and say, I'm here for you, I'm here to represent you, I want you to vote for me, and within a few months you're gone. Well, of course, it didn't just happen with her. There was one, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, who presented himself to the electorate and didn't even get as far as coming through the doors of the Assembly.
And just finally, around the council elections, you're going to have surely a target for what you want to achieve. What would be your hope of what to achieve at the local government elections? What would be a success or a failure?
Well, obviously winning more seats than we presently have, and we are tending in this election, whereas the Assembly election was about fighting every seat and giving everyone an opportunity. In this election, we're probably more focused on fighting winnable seats to try and maximise the return of councillors. So, there are growth areas for us, and Strangford's one such area, East Antrim's such an area, Belfast is an area of that nature. So I think there's no council area where we're not going to be fighting hard to get a foothold. And where we've had councillors, we've had 5 councillors in Mid and East Antrim, we really have made an impact. We have been the voice of challenge within that dysfunctional council to where all sorts of things have been going on, and it's been TUV that's been calling out most of those issues. So I think just as in Stormont, we've been a voice of challenge, so in council we would be a voice of challenge, and I think people probably recognise that's increasingly necessary.